What is solved by saying he's a racist? That's why he shot the boy. What solves that? This, and what is he doing with it? And who taught him and told him how to behave with this?
Of course, that Bill Cosby talking about what for many people has been an intersection of a couple different issues in Florida. Obviously, the issue of race perceptions that went on late in that evening as when we begin the trial. Obviously, that'll be an interesting exchange here to figure out what was in the mind of Mr. Zimmerman. But then secondarily, the issue that it wasn't a fist fight or just an argument. It was a gunshot and a fatality. And the police let Mr. Zimmerman go that night because that was, at the time at least, completely legal what he did in Florida under Stand Your Ground. Dominic, you heard what Bill Cosby said, and do you agree with him? Is this an issue? Was this really more about black and white that night, or was this really more about a handgun and a guy who shouldn't be walking around with it, even legally, in the state of Florida?
Both, but I do take issue. The police let him go because, obviously, of politics. The homicide detective wanted him charged to begin with. I mean, Richard, you can't deny that. It's public record. Well, I'd like to see you make a credible case.
We don't know what happened, Dominic.
Okay, but wait. But did the homicide detective want him charged?
I believe so.
Okay, so that's all I said. But of course, it's guns, because Zimmerman, a gun gives one a sense of empowerment. And I realized that while in the state of Pennsylvania going to a shooting range. A gun is a very powerful item. It permits you, when you're 5'10", you can take on somebody that's 6'5", because it's a very powerful item. But I think Bill Cosby is off a little bit in terms of course, this has to do with race.
Let me bring in some of the callers here. Let's start off with Jacob. He's calling us from New York City. Thanks for joining us, Jacob. You're on the line.
Yes, I totally agree with Dominic Carter, but I would even go even further. I think it was kind of both. It was partially the fact that he was profiled, and then secondly, the actions that led to his death was because he had a gun.
You know, for me, I think sometimes we dance around this subject. What I don't understand for the life of me is we had an assault weapons ban in this country. Millions of people still were able to get guns. Somehow, we in this country we just had to get assault weapons back in the streets. Somehow in this country, we think we have to put a law in the books to let somebody bring a gun into a bar. Somebody bring a gun, let me finish, into a church, into a park. I get the Second Amendment. We can debate. I don't want to spend our time on what was the intent of the Founding Fathers with it. But for me, it was something different. Whoever thought it'd be a good idea to bring a gun into a bar, and we're going to protect the right of the gun owner versus the other 99% of the people in the bar that night when you're mixing alcohol and ammunition? To me, we dance around the edges of what's the main subject. That's crazy.
Yeah, but Richard, where are the cases of the situation which you're imagining actually happening?
I'm not imagining. That's the law in the books in Tennessee.
No. But where are the bar shootouts that you're throwing out on the table as, oh, we don't want that?
Howard, time out. You've got kids in school. Do you want the roommate of one of your kids to be able to legally have a firearm in a college dorm? Now, we're old, or I'll make myself, but I remember what I used to do when I was in college. I don't think that's the proper mindset where I should be having a firearm in my dorm room.
Richard,
why are we debating this? This is crazy.
Why are these bills being introduced? Because do you think if students at Virginia Tech had guns, he would have gotten 32?
Oh, good God.
Come on.
Don't say good God. That's why legislatures are passing this legislation.
America has more guns and more gun crime and more gun murders than any other country. They are related concepts.
And the carnage occurs where the shooters know they can find unarmed victims.
Talk about not being able to prove your case. There's absolutely no evidence of that. Countries with less firearms have less gun crimes. Countries with more firearms have more gun crimes. Bingo. That's statistics.
100,000 people a year die at the end of a gun in this country. And again, I'm not trying to roll back the debate that you can't own a gun in this country, but I just don't know when we decided if you want to be a hunter, you want to protect your home, okay, I get it. But why, after the Gabby Gifford shooting, do you all remember that picture? Remember the guy walking down the streets of Arizona in broad daylight with a semi-automatic? That makes sense in this country?
You know one.
Come on, Howard.
Richard, one of the aspects.
That's crazy.
One of the aspects of the taking the gun into the bar is if it's legal to have a gun in that jurisdiction, do you want somebody who goes through the parking lot of a bar to know that there are going to be guns in those cars?
What are you doing?
What do you mean, what am I talking about? If the law says you can't take the gun which you can otherwise legally possess and carry into a bar, that means if you go to a bar, you're going to put the gun into your glove compartment. How easy is it to get in the car? These policies come from practical situations.
How about leave the gun at home?
Well, then you're depriving somebody of the rights which the law has provided them.
That's a choice. The rights of the Constitution may say you can have a right to a gun. They don't say you have a right to a gun without a license. They don't say you have a right to a gun without a training program. They don't say you have a right to a gun anywhere you want. They don't say you have the right to discharge the gun anywhere you want. Those kinds of compromises can be made. We go back to the Republican Party being a wholly owned subsidiary of the NRA. That's why these laws are being passed, because 2 years ago, the Republican Party, for economic reasons, had a sweeping victory.